be here and to have enjoyed so many of the speakers before talk about play. And as I was listening to them present, I was thinking, oh yes, that's exactly the point I want to make. So I feel like I'm speaking to a bit of a converted crowd, which is fine by me. I think intuitively you all recognize the importance of play, which is wonderful. The challenge is, I think, and what I hope to bring today is that it's very hard to just use this intuition to protect and preserve the places of play in our children's lives. The cultural tide that is turning and creating and eroding places of play is actually quite strong. And so as a result, a lot of play for our children is becoming endangered. So what I want to do today is I want to give you the developmental science behind why it is so critical. There are many things that are competing with play today, things like too many structured activities. There's nothing wrong with activities per se, but too many of them erode the spaces that our children need to play in. There's too many things that masquerade as play that we are told it brings about the type of play that leads to development that really do not. They have far too much access to entertainment and information than I certainly ever had as a child. There is no need to be creating when you are so overstimulated with so many outside things. The other challenge is that, of course, we have our peers, our kids now have access to their peers, and we have this belief that they need to be socialized with their peers in order to become social beings. But the reality is that they have far too much times with their peers, and that again can erode the places that are important for play. And so we have all of these things combined with learning, instruction, and sort of a world that is turning towards outcomes as the desired goal. And so what happens is that they start to endanger play, because play, quite frankly, is seen as frivolous, meaningless, a luxury that is afforded to the young. But in actuality, when you look at developmental science, you will not find a developmentalist out there who does not say that play is absolutely at the heart of how a child becomes their own person. It is where a sense of self is developed and solidified. All mammal species play. There isn't a mammal out there, a dog, a cat, a dolphin. There isn't a mammal that doesn't play. And what research clearly shows is that deprived of play, they perish. This is central to our development. So the question then is as parents, how do we make room for play? How do we turn the tide? How do we use this intuition, this knowledge that we know play is valuable? Hopefully we remember being a child and the joy and the freedom that we had in being a child. When my kids say to me, Mom, I'm bored, I'm like, you're bored? I would love to be bored. Do you know the kind of things I would do if I was bored right now? Are you kidding me? Enjoy your boredom. It's fantastic. When my kids said to me in the summertime, I mean, they live in Disneyland, right? In the summertime when they said they're bored, I said, well, let's go sit down and just think about it until something dawns on us to do. And they'd say, I know what I want to do. I want to go outside. Oh, okay. Solution found. And so what do we do, though, in terms of making sense of this play? So what I want to do is I want to talk about the three essential characteristics of play. The study of play is actually quite old. You can go back into about the days of Plato, 360 BC. And he said this about play. He said, you can uncover more about a person in 1 hour of play than you can a year of conversation. Right? And at 360 BC, he so clearly captured the essence and the heart of play. We use this word play very liberally. Playoffs, playstations, we play house, we play fight. But what does it actually mean? Well, there's three things that I want to talk about. In particular, play is not work. When you are at play, you're not working. And there's some very particular differences between play and work. And the challenge is today is what we do with our kids is we unintentionally, we turn their play into work. And we need to stop because it erodes that space that they need to uncover and to explore. So just think about it for a minute. If you are at play, what engages you? What is fun? Where your focus goes is actually in the activity. We actually heard that so beautifully when Anna talked about being in the zone, as an athlete, just finding that place where you're experiencing the moment. It quickly becomes work when it becomes about outcome. And I just love the fact that you use that word because that is the heart of work. It's about outcome. When everything is focused on the end goal, when your fun is in achieving the end goal. Right? What engages you is your imaginings about the end goal. So take, for example, the topic or the activity of eating. Eating can be playful and it can also be made work. When I traveled to Italy with my husband, we would eat very early, and as we were about ready to leave the restaurant, we would see families come in, Italian families come in and start to dine. And when you watched how they eat for hours, like in each other's companies. They're enjoying each other. They're engaging each other, right? It's fun, it's playful. It has a wonderful vitality to it. I compare that to North America, okay? Eat your food, or if you don't eat your peas, your broccoli, and your beans, you're gonna go blind, right? Now, when did having to eat to keep our body healthy? You see the problem, right, is we're focused on the outcome. In fact, a lot of North American families no longer even eat dinner together. And so you see that even that activity no longer engages the family as a unit as it once did. It was interesting over the summer. My kids were introduced to duct tape as a craft object. And so I said, you know, I'll buy you as much duct tape you want. Don't worry about using it all. You have an endless supply. Just do what you want with it. So they tried to make doll shoes. That didn't turn out so well. They then went into purses for their dolls, and they found a real winner there, and they created all these different frills in different sizes. I have a duct tape purse that I now carry. And they loved it. And they said, Mommy, you know, what do you want? I'll take anything you have. It's all lovely. They were lost for hours making duct tape. They even created a store called the Duct Tape Delights. And they would ring a bell when they had a new product made, and we'd go in, and then we'd leave. Now, the interesting thing is as soon as our guests came over, and we're blessed with many friends, but as they came over, what is your instant reaction when you see something like that in a child? That's wonderful. That's great. Can I put in an order? This is what I'd like for my duct tape purse. My husband has a duct tape wallet for every day of the week. They soon had orders flooding in from everybody, and then somebody invariably said to them, do you know that you could open up a store, sell those online, and make money? Now you see what happened. Do you see it? Right? I'm talking to an entrepreneurial group of women. You know what happens, right? That absolutely turned into work for them. And their energy for it started to subside. The things that we need to remember is there's nothing wrong with work. Our kids will get there. But their childhood must be a time full of much play. Mark Twain said it best when he said, work is what a body is obliged to do. Play is what a body is not obliged to do. Our kids need places where it's free just to have no outcomes directing the activity. The other essential characteristic of play is it's not for real. I have 18 minutes. It's okay, no worries. I'm just gonna catch my breath. Work is not for real. Play is not for real. Play is actually without consequences. It's the freedom from consequences that actually makes it playful. If you are worried about having to produce something, then that's where your head goes to. This is a chance that they get to play house. You get to be married and leave whenever you want. You get to play house without having to have a mortgage. You get to play fight and then, be best friends in a second, right? You were meant to have places that were not for real, because that is where you experiment, where you have trial and error that prepare you for what will come ahead. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, what about books and movies then? Is that really play? No, actually it's not, because it doesn't actually meet the third criteria, which is for play to really happen for a child, it needs to be expressive and exploratory. And this gets missed all the time. Play is an active engagement in the child. It is not a passive receptor of information or stimulation. If there is true play that gives rise to development, you will see a child unleashing this incredible amount of tension. There is an outpouring. It is coming from within the child. They become an active agent in their world. It is where the sense of self first comes to the surface. It needs to be expressive and exploratory. If you were to give your child a coloring page that had lines on it that they were meant to color in, versus a blank piece of paper with a crayon, which is more expressive and exploratory? The one where they create the lines. You see what I'm saying? And so many times we're sold things and told things that this will allow for their expression. The best things are when there are the most lack of limits on their expressions, that allows them to come forth. When you really look at play, there's a sense of freedom. There is a wonderful sense of enjoyment that comes when we are in these activities. And you will see it. Your children, there's such that beautiful clip in that video of that child just running. That is that sense of incredible freedom, not a care in the world. It is what we most envy about their childhood. And yet we are turning them all into little workers, and we need to stop. So what role does this play in their development? It has 3 critical roles. Number 1, it is where the self is truly expressed. If you think about yourself or your child, as you look at them play, what do you see? How many of you were the teachers, the designers, right? The entomologists and the scientists and the engineers. You see the seeds of who they are in their very earliest of plays. I think one of my kids is destined to be a teacher, and I think the other one is destined to run a business, actually, quite frankly, because she's just very organized and very sure of herself and has lots of wonderful ideas. But it's wonderful to see them just emerge and become their own people. And it's actually very therapeutic for children. You will see whatever is going on in their world, whatever they're trying to make sense of, you'll see it in their play. If they start school, you'll start to see all sorts of themes about school. If there's a new baby on the way, guess how many babies start to enter their play. It's therapeutic in their effect. It has to, whatever they ingest about their world, they have to absolutely be able to digest. And play is their motif. It isn't work and it isn't talk therapy. It's actually in play. The second characteristic is it's actually where creativity is most likely to happen. We don't teach creativity. We create the conditions under which a child becomes creative. We create the conditions of play. As I was leaving here today, my daughter came out and said, "Mommy, my hamster, look what she did. She chewed the toilet roll into this shape. I made it into a dinosaur." And I said, "Yes." I was still trying to see what dinosaur there was in there, but she saw a dinosaur. And then she said, and then she chewed another piece, and I decided I would incorporate this into my duct tape purse. And she made it into a duct tape purse. 3 days ago, my kids said to me, we couldn't decide whether to play dolls or with our big dolls or our Barbies. So, Mommy, it's okay, we figured it out. And I said, well, how did you figure that out? She says, well, we just made the big dolls the giants in the land, and the Barbies are the little people, and they have been captured by the giants. So now it all works out, right? What a great product idea, right? You know, but it's not about that. It's all about how they envision their world and how their creativity comes to the rise. Do you know that children that are deprived of this type of play show neural networks that are 20 to 30% less developed? Play is where, it is in play where our brains actually wire up. It's the brains that are created through play that benefit from learning and instruction. We cannot deprive our children of these places. And third, it's where growth and development occur. It's where they get to practice life. You can be married and divorced within minutes, and you get to have no trial and error, and you see all sorts of wonderful growth comes to the surface in these time periods, free of consequences. That's the critical thing here. If you know self-actualized people, if you are a self-actualized individual, there's one thing I know about you. You played. You played. Because it is central to becoming your own person. Without play, your sense of self, your sense of agency doesn't have the space and the oxygen that it needs to be developed. Now, you can't teach, how effective is it to tell your child to go out and play? I'm sure you tried that over the summer, many of you. Just go play, you'll find something to do. You can't make someone play. Play is a state of mind. It's not something you can teach, you can't command it. It's spontaneous and it opens up in a child. This is the essential thing that most people miss about play, is that a child must be free to play, and there are certain freedoms that have to be present for a child to enter into this state of play. The first one is they need, and it's obvious, freedom from hunger, freedom from pain, freedom from being tired. They need freedom from any kind of screens and scheduled activities. Our kids spend far too much time in front of screens today. In fact, you're seeing all sorts of issues with adolescents today who really have had screens at the fore in a lot of their play. And it's starting to take hold, and we're starting to see some warnings that are coming through the pediatric societies. We have a lot of emphasis on instruction and schooling. We need to carve out space from that. We need some freedom from technology of attachment. What I mean by that is that school doesn't end at 3 o'clock anymore. Our kids can hang on to each other past 3 o'clock. When they're hanging on to each other, they're not emerging as themselves into play, into creative activities. There isn't an adolescent that I don't counsel, that I say, I wish you had hours every day where you just got to do whatever you want. In fact, there's some organizations that build play right into their daily lives. Google Network, 10% of their time, they just play. There's no outcomes, there's no nothing. And in those moments that their employees are playing, there is more creativity that comes out of that 10% because there's this incredible amount of freedom. Enough freedom from being entertained, from everything going into the child, and enough freedom for having to make things work. The biggest freedom of all that gets missed, and this isn't as well known perhaps, is that attachment is actually what needs to work most of all for a child. Why? Because we're relational beings. When they come out of the womb, they're looking to say, who's going to take care of me? Everything inside of them, their instincts and their emotions are saying, who is going to be my caretaker? This, of course, creates incredible guilt when we leave them. But if they were meant to be by our sides for life, nature would have, made them cling to us. But the reality is that they're meant to separate. We can have our separations from them, but we cannot walk away from our responsibility, which is to ensure that they are attached to some adult who will provide the warmth and the care that they need for them if we can ourselves not be there. The different ways that we can do this are many. How do you fulfill a child's attachment hunger? Well, enough contact and closeness that actually satiates them. Enough warmth and enjoyment where they actually feel invited. Christine, you said it so well when you said, I knew my parents worked, but I knew that I mattered. And that's exactly at the heart of it. It's, do your children, it's not about quality time, it's about the sense of being in your presence. And there is this invitation, a generous invitation where they get this sense of importance, this warmth. Is there a sense of contact and closeness? Is there a sense of significance? Is there a sense of invitation? One of the things that I see today when I go to the park is I see so many of us behind our screens talking to our children. How do you convey an invitation to your child if they can't see your eyes? Right? It's so simple, right? And even to my husband, talking to him behind my screen, it's important that those eyes and that warmth that comes when we just focus on each other, it fills our children in such a different way that nothing else can ever truly fill them and free them from this relational hunger that they have. They need to feel enough love to feel content and enough understanding to feel known. Freud said it well. He said, we cannot serve two masters. We cannot try to get our own relational needs met and be seeking relationship and contact and closeness and also do the job of growing up and playing and discovering and maturing. You can't do both. There is not enough luxury in the system to be able to focus on relationship and also focus on maturing. And so there's always a sacrifice play, and the sacrifice play is maturation. We will go for attachment. A child will go for attachment any day of the week over their relational needs. How do you know when your child is free of this relational hunger? I remember my daughter coming out of her kindergarten class and standing there, and she was running towards me, and I had missed her greatly. It was September, we just started kindergarten. And she was running towards me, and our eyes locked, and I was just so full of, all that wonderful love for her. And she kept running towards me, Mama, it's one of those beautiful moments, right? And as soon as she got close to me, she threw her bag at me and said, Mama, I'm going to play. But the thing is what was she doing all the time she was running to me and looking at me? She was eating. She was filling up. She was filling up. She was filling up. And as she got close to me, what did she no longer need? You see it, and it turned. And you feel the energy, and it just turns. Go away. I just want to play, right? The quick trick is if your kid comes to you and needs a hug, give them a big hug. Even if it's a teenager, they still need hugs. Hold on to them, and don't just give them one hug. Hold on to them until they look at you and say, will you let go of me? I just wanted a hug, right? That is where you have satiated that limbic system, and it goes, thank you, I've got everything I need. Boom, I can go play. I can go discover. I can go figure out who I am. That is our responsibility. We can't make them play, but we sure can fill up their little tanks so that they're free to play. If you want the recipe card of how we go about this in terms of creating the conditions of play, here it is. Here's your top 6 list. Number 1, we have to absolutely value the role of play in our children's lives. You have to serve as the buffer against things that will impinge on your children's time. It is fast and it is thick. And you might not always know the reasons why, but you absolutely have to serve as a shield that will make sure that that play doesn't get eroded in their time, in their life, by competing activities. Don't turn work into outcomes. It's hard. You'll catch yourself sometimes. Don't turn everything into a learning moment. Their artwork isn't necessarily meant to adorn your walls or as gifts for grandma. They do it just because they're in the moment for it. Sure, we celebrate that stuff, but as soon as we turn it into work, they lose that vitality that's meant to come from those activities. Protect spaces. Don't make them work until they're ready or they're able to. Children are not ready to work until they're about 5 to 7, until they can sufficiently delay gratification. There's a time and a place for that, but especially children at the age of 5, we have no business making them work. When we do our ABCs, or we clean up our room, or we do anything, it's always a play motif, right? That's why we have all those songs, and it's always friendly, and everything's fun, because it's about play, especially for under the ages of 5 to 7. When they're past the ages of 5 to 7, they have a little bit more capacity to delay gratification, and then we can make them work a little bit more. Provide the necessary freedoms, tired, hungry, stimulation, all of these things. And finally, the biggest freedom that they need is rest in our care. Yuri Brofenbenner was a wonderful attachment researcher. He had about 50 years studying attachment. And he said in his retirement, if I could tell parents the one thing that mattered most is that every child needs at least one adult that's absolutely crazy about them. It's about enjoying your children, it's about the warmth, and it's about the delight. If you can do that for your children, then what nature will do is release them from that freedom so that they can play. And that in their play, they'll discover who they are, a sense of self will be formed, and you get to sit back, retire to a consulting role, and watch the fruits of your labor. Thank you very much.